town for one day and you guys spend time making that cartoon? So cool. Welcome back. George W. Bush has 3 more days on the job. So what's he up to today? On his last presidential TGIF? Well, he is taking advantage of the perks while he still can. Yes, Mr. Bush took off early this afternoon to spend his last weekend as president at Camp David, which I think means that the George W. Bush Legacy Tour is officially over. The wrap party was sort of last night in the East Room of the White House, where the president delivered his farewell address to a bank of TV cameras and a few staffers and some citizen symbols handpicked to create the right bye-bye ambiance. Despite heroic effort, the George W. Bush Legacy Tour does not appear to have been successful. Despite the farewell address and the many exit interviews, despite bringing his very popular wife Laura along to many of those interviews, despite hiring a former staffer to write a pro-Bush op-ed for USA Today, despite a 40-page brochure published by the White House to remind us of Mr. Bush's many accomplishments, most Americans still think he was an unparalleled failure as a president. To be specific, 57% of Americans say George Bush is one of the 5 worst presidents in American history. And Bush's low approval rating isn't budging. In the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll, it is still rock steady at a rock bottom 27%. But luckily for the president's own feelings about himself, he thinks he did a pretty good job.
The idea of being able to serve a nation you love has been joyful. In other words, my spirits have never been down.
In terms of the economy, look, I inherited a recession. I'm ending on a recession. In the meantime, there were 52 months of uninterrupted job growth. Iraq has gone from a brutal dictatorship and a sworn enemy of America to an Arab democracy at the heart of the Middle East and a friend of the United States. When I get home in Texas after this unbelievable experience, I will look in the mirror and be proud of what I see.
Why is nobody else getting convinced by this? Why aren't the poll numbers going up? Why is nobody listening to him? I wonder if part of the reason is that people do not seem to be interested in what he has to say anymore. I mean, did you see this today? Dick Cheney, his own vice president, barely managing to stay awake during the president's big final speech. The speech was only 13 minutes long, and the vice president is apparently nodding off. Now, we may not want to hear from President Bush anymore, but I wonder if that's only because we know what he's going to say. He's been saying the same thing a lot. I sort of think we might be riveted, actually, if we got a real valedictory from President Bush, a real confessional tell-all. Thanks to the twisted imagination of Rolling Stone's Matt Taibbi, we've got that. His latest cover story for Rolling Stone is a fake exit interview with the president in which Mr. Bush spills his guts about FEMA and Iraq and actually apologizes for messing up before collapsing in tears. But only after the interviewer fills Mr. Bush in on what so much of the country thinks of his legacy. Can I quote here? "All you wanted was a pat on the back and a few accomplishments of your own to hang your hat on, but instead you're about to spend the rest of eternity pondering your now official legacy as the worst and most pig-headed leader in the history of Western democracy, a man who almost single-handedly sank the mightiest nation on earth by turning the presidency into a $50 trillion therapy session that ended in 2 disastrous wars, a financial crisis that threatens the entire system of international capitalism, and a legacy of corruption on a scale not seen since the Borgias or maybe Nero." Well, so there's that. Joining us now is Matt Taibbi, contributing editor at Rolling Stone, who wrote the magazine's current cover story. Matt, it's very nice to see you.
Very nice to see you, Rachel.
I love quoting you. It makes me feel like I might have been smart enough to write that.
Yeah, right.
Did you watch Bush's farewell speech, final episode of his legacy tour last night?
I did. I think I might have been the only one, though. I mean, according to the New York Times, what did he get, page 21? Like, he was after an obituary for a zookeeper or something like that this morning. It was terrible. I mean, it was a really embarrassing exit speech, I thought.
In demeanor, or in terms of what he said?
In demeanor, and the fact that it was only 13 minutes long, and he really, you know, he couldn't really come up with anything that he had done, that he had accomplished, except that we've only been bombed catastrophically once, you know, in the time that he was president.
But not since then. No further catastrophic bombings.
Right, exactly. Well, I guess we have to give him credit for that.
Sure.
But you know, it really was sad, I thought, and it's funny. I think if history looks back at him now, you know, even the rich, he's not a hero in their eyes anymore because all the money that he gave them over these years has now disappeared. So I mean, who exactly did he benefit during those years? And it's just it's very sad.
You, as a journalist and as a political observer, have been really good at getting into the connection between how politicians behave in the political world and their psyche and their mindset.
Right.
What do you make of this, history will judge me as a good president line that we've been hearing from Bush and from Condoleezza Rice and other people in the administration?
Well, I think it's, when you look at George Bush's psyche, I think that Oliver Stone sort of got it right in the movie W. I think this is a guy who had a lot of hang-ups about his father and who really just wanted to make something of himself and prove that he could do the same job that his dad did. And in a weird, twisted kind of way, he did kind of pull it off. He got elected twice, and for him that was an enormous accomplishment. But the problem was that he confused his own personal psychological problems with the business of the entire world, and he just wasn't competent to handle that other part of the equation. And it ended up being our loss, which was really sad, I thought.
Well, his legacy is our legacy. I mean, we have to live with it in a way that is sort of bigger than the way that he has to live with it, I suppose.
Right.
In your fictional exit interview, Bush apologizes in tears, sort of pitifully. If he did that in real life, do you think it would help somehow? Do you think it would be cathartic?
Yeah, I think one of the things that was most troubling about Bush over the years was his inability to recognize when he'd made a mistake. If you go back in 2004 during the debates when he was asked, if he'd made any mistakes, and it just took him a while to even come up with anything. And when he finally did come up with something, it was, I appointed the wrong guy, or I didn't fire this person. And his inability to recognize or to consider other points of view was his tragic undoing this whole time. And his inflexibility on Iraq, for instance, is I think what's resulting in his approval ratings being so low now. People seeing that he's unable to reconcile with, his mistakes over years.
Calling WMD a disappointment. There not being any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, that was a disappointment for him.
That's a minor understatement there.
Last question. Are you going to miss covering Bush? Are you going to miss covering Bush's Washington?
I think any comedian is going to miss George W. Bush. We're not going to have another president who says stuff like, I want to put food in your children, or, I hope that man and fish can coexist, or that kind of stuff. It's just, he's sort of one of a kind in that sense. We've had dumb presidents before, but he was sort of dumb in an inspired, ingenious kind of a way that we're just not going to see ever again. And it's kind of too bad. And in a way, having Obama, this level-headed, logical guy, is almost going to be kind of a drag if it wasn't so good in so many other ways.
He may turn out to be inspiring in surprising ways. You never know.
Right, that's true. That's true.
Matt Taibbi, contributing editor at Rolling Stone, author of the book The Great Derangement, which I should mention is out in a very attractive paperback version right now. It's nice to see you, Matt. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks very much, Rachel.